Welcome to the Creative Island Podcast,
a show aimed at helping creative individuals transform their passion into profession.
Each episode will share powerful strategies, tips, and practical tools to empower you to create the income, the lifestyle, and the legacy you were designed for.
We are your hosts, Adam Bowman
and Jason Pepper.
Enjoy the show. All right, Creative Island listeners, this is podcast number 9. That's crazy. We've come a long way. We're one more podcast session away from podcast number 10, which is a little goal we set for ourselves from the beginning. So thank you for sticking around. If you're new to this, go back and listen. There's a whole lot of nuggets of information we dropped. But anyways, I'm Adam Bowman, the host of Creative Island, and as always, with the resident co-host, Jason Pepper. What's up today, dude?
What's up, man? And just a quick note for our listeners, if you guys want to hear about something specifically, you want to hear us kind of pick at something, just send us a line, drop us a line, send us an email. It's info@creativeisland.online. We'd love to hear what you want to talk about.
Yeah.
We want to chat about it, and we want to give you the goods. So,
and if you don't have a Gmail account or a Hotmail account, you're living under a rock, just comment below. We want to create this cyclical feedback loop with our listeners and sort of create this community. We're going to start holding live events soon, and we want you to be a part of it in any shape or form. So listening to this podcast, it just gives you the inside scoop for all the information now we're about to drop on you.
Yeah, absolutely. We just want to help you take it to the next level.
Yeah.
It's really tough being an artist. You know, it kind of feels like you're on your own creative island. Stuck somewhere. Don't be stuck. This is a lifeline. We're your floating dinghy off the island. Yeah. And so jump on, tune in, and let's get into it. What are we talking about today?
A solid segue from that. And one reason I think artists feel like they're on this creative island, because the perpetual self-doubt that we have within our own field of creative arts, whether it's whether it's film, whether it's music, whether it's visual arts, anything. I think coming from a filmmaker, I am very self-critical, have a lot of self-doubts that aren't necessarily serving me at all in the best way that I can be. So I think I just want to unpack sort of where the self-doubt comes from, how to face that challenge, how to tackle it head on, sort of come out on top of that self-doubt.
Yeah, okay, let's talk about that. There's lots to unpack there, but we can try our best to kind of hit as many points as we can.
Yeah, we're not perfect, but we try, you know?
Yeah, we try, you know? We'll get it right one of these days.
Yeah, one day.
But, it's self-doubt is really just a feedback mechanism. And what self-doubt is it's important information for us to let us know that we're doing something that's inauthentic to us.
Okay.
So, we talked about this on many other episodes, but if you're feeling self-doubt about something, it's usually because you're not doing the right things. You're doing the wrong things. And you're doing too much of the wrong things. So, or you're addicted to praise and you get criticism, which, a lot of people tend to polarize the world into all positive or all negative.
Yeah.
And they can't seem to see that simultaneous contrast that exists no matter what situation is, right? No matter what event or what someone says, or there's good, useful stuff in everything. And self-doubt starts to come in when you perceive something to give you more drawback than benefit. But it's usually a sign that you're not doing something inspiring to you.
And then is that one of the only signifiers of self-doubt, when you're just doing something that doesn't serve you or that you don't like, you're not passionate about, or does it come from other places too?
No, it could come from other places. I'm not necessarily an expert on this, but I think that it's good feedback regardless to kind of tell you that, hey, maybe there's something there, or you're doing too much of something that you don't like, and you have to identify that.
Okay. And then I think it's just accepting, the first step is definitely accepting that the self-doubt is coming from a place that I need to think deeply more and reflect upon, rather than just pushing it away as just criticism and just keep on, moving towards insanity of doing the same things without any change, right?
Yeah, and that's a good point. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's doing the same things and expecting a different result, and then not getting the result and then having doubt.
And then doing it again.
And then doing it again and then having doubt. And then you're like, dude, I'm just self-doubting all the time. I'm self-depreciating. I just can't figure it out. But you haven't changed something to get a different result yet.
Yeah.
So you keep doing the same thing, getting the same result, and you're like, oh no, this isn't working. So it's probably partially that as well.
Yeah. And then I guess accepting that this self-doubt is coming from a place of within you, whether it's like your id, your ego, super ego. I'm not going to go into that because I'm not qualified to talk about that shit. But it's definitely coming from a place where your brain, your subconscious, whatever is telling you that this isn't working. And then you just have to go and unpack that and not take it as so personal, even though it is coming from yourself, which is just like a weird meta thing to think about. But it is coming from a place of like, maybe I just have to throw different things at the wall and see what else sticks, other than just doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people put themselves on pedestals and in pits.
Okay.
And I think there's a lot of volatility, especially for artists. Like, there's so many times in our life as an artist that you get really cocky and you sort of expand on who you actually are, and then you attract some humbling circumstance to kind of bring you down. And then you go in the other direction where you get self-doubt and you deflate even further from who you are, and then you attract some empowering event to like bring you back up.
Yeah.
And I think that it's important to recognize that volatility and try to avoid it as best you can, and know yourself enough to like not get into that situation. Like, you're not authentic when you're up on a pedestal.
Yeah.
You're not authentic when you're in a pit. You're authentic when you're embracing both. You're somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, in that equilibrium somewhere, right?
Yeah, exactly. So self-doubt is like you're deflated, you're sort of sitting in a pit, and it's not being authentic. You gotta do things that inspire you to pull yourself out of there.
Yeah, and then I think some extent, like for creatives, it's like, I know there's one lane of people really want to be in that self-deprecative mindset where it just looks like you're humble. Like, like someone like gives you a compliment. Oh, that was a great film. That was a great song you wrote. Like, I listened to it on Spotify like 6 times, and they just like immediately deflect that compliment and then shit on themselves to make themselves feel better that like they're not on that pedestal, like you said.
Yeah.
So it comes from different places where I sometimes have to like step back out of my own shoes and look at myself from a different perspective. Because when I was getting praise for the film I did, I got a couple of awards. It's a really weird feeling when you just eaten shit for like the longest time ever, and you have a little success, and you just like, I don't deserve this. This isn't me. This isn't natural. But I think like I reflected and I was like, you know what? Like, I have to own myself, and doing the opposite and just shitting on myself is just like, you're not benefiting yourself by just saying you're terrible when in fact you did do a good thing, And I think that's where some self-doubt comes in again, because you're expecting that next result to be another success. But then when it's like you're getting closer to the release date or something and you start getting hesitant and self-doubt, and you're just like, it breaks down your walls and doesn't let you perform or create like you usually do.
Yeah. And I think another thing to point out, something that might be really helpful for listeners, is like, when you start to get self-doubt, try to expand your space and time horizons, because usually what it is it's short-term thinking, right? It's really like immediate gratifying short-term thinking, not long-term vision.
Yeah.
So like, if your life, say you're a musician and your life is dedicated to getting on stage and and just sharing your art with the world, like, you're not going to get hung up around day-to-day criticism or day-to-day feedback, even if you make mistakes along the way. Everybody makes mistakes, but the bigger your space and time horizons are, the stronger your mission is, the less you get thrown off, the less time you spend in a pit.
Yeah, totally.
And the less time you spend on a pedestal, because you're just like, the vision's super long. Your mission is so big and beyond your own lifetime that you're not really getting hung up in the weeds in all this like really trivial day-to-day shit.
Yeah, it's like tokens along the path. You get these tokens. Sometimes you have to give tokens away. But like, when you get them, you just, like what you're saying, you have this long mission that adds up to a sum of these tokens. And it doesn't necessarily, like, you could be losing handfuls of them a day, but then like the next day you bring in a truckload sort of thing. And it's like, if you think about it, in each transaction of those like metaphorical tokens, you're going to get bogged down with day to day. Like, I'm losing today. This sucks. My life's terrible. I hate this, whatever creative passion I'm doing. Yeah. And the next day you wake up on the better side of the bed, and then it's the total opposite. And you're just like blasting yourself up. And it's just like, it's such a rocky boat that just sways one way or the other,
Yeah. But it's all based on a really short, it's all short-sightedness.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm only seeing a day, a week, a month, a year ahead. I'm not seeing the 30-year play.
Yeah.
Because if you saw the 30-year play, you don't care about the day-to-day, the day-to-day, the week-to-week, the month-to-month. Even like, you can just recognize a few bad years.
Yeah.
But when your vision's big enough, you don't need to worry about that shit. So it's important for artists to like do, whatever various exercises to keep that mission fresh and inspired.
Yeah.
To stay inspired. Because as long as you're inspired, you can afford to like make some mistakes. You can
Yeah.
afford to burn some relationships. You can afford to, maybe have to reinvent yourself a few times.
Yeah.
That's okay. Because as long as your mission's big enough, you're not going to get hung up in the weeds.
Yeah, and you'll have the time in the end. Was there a time ever where, like, when you were in like bands and whatnot, where you had any self-doubt that sort of conflicted with what you're doing artistically at all?
Yeah, for sure. But you know what really helped me in those years, and even now, like anytime I start to feel those feelings, I just go right back to the things that inspired me, like the long term.
Yeah.
Like I've a question one of my mentors told me. I think I said this on one of the first podcasts, but it was like, how do you want someone to perceive your life 1,000 years into the future? Like, start thinking bigger.
Oh, God.
Like that changes
Yeah,
your
that's
space and
crazy.
time horizons. I'll give you another one. This one, if you have a goal as big as your family, you need a vision as big as your community.
Wow.
If you have a goal as big as your community, you need a vision as big as your city. If you have a goal as big as your city, you need a vision as big as your province or state. If you have a goal as big as your province or state, you need a vision as big as your country. If you got a goal as big as your country, you need a vision as big as the world. And if you got a goal to change the world, you need an astronomical vision. So
Wow.
you have to increase how big your vision is.
Yeah.
Don't get hung up in like really low, trivial shit, because it's just short-sightedness.
Yeah, and you don't have to be the next Elon Musk. That's not what we're trying to say.
No,
it's
everybody's
just
different.
like, yeah, it's everyone's different. It all looks different, and the metrics are different. But that's really good. I know, where'd you pick that up from, dude? That's crazy.
Yeah, man. Just a mentor shared that with me many years ago, and it always stuck with me. So anytime I get bogged down in like the day-to-day stuff, as soon as you expand your space and time horizons, all that shit just melts away, because
Yeah.
you're like, oh fuck, it's okay.
Like, I can't worry about this anymore.
Yeah, like, and anything, no matter how bad or how crazy or how cruel or how unfair something is, like eventually a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, all of a sudden it just becomes an insignificant event. So you want to just train yourself in those moments, in those self-doubting bouts, that it's, just go back and get re-inspired on why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, and then in turn that'll hardwire you for when like adversity hits, when it hits like really hard, like having to, like, business goes bankrupt, having to start from scratch. Like you'll have the building blocks by that time to just turn it around and start something fresh within like a way like shorter time span than it was the first time you went around, and then it just keeps on building and building and building, right?
Yeah. There's this one guy, this entrepreneur that I don't know him personally, but I know his story,
Okay.
and it's an awesome story. And he started a junk removal business.
Okay.
And I think it's Brian Scudamore, the 1-800 Junk
Okay.
guy. And really cool story. And he said it took him, basically started in business, and he had a truck and he was driving around just picking up trash from people, right? And then it took him 7 or 8 or 10 years to go from, maybe 50 grand a year or something to like 100 or 200,000 a year.
Wow.
And then maybe 2 or 3 years from that to go to 5 million a year.
Yeah.
And then now I think his combined companies do like 500 million.
That's crazy.
So like say you're in a tough spot and you get self-doubt, maybe you've got to reinvent yourself. Like, it's not going to take you 10 years to get back up to where you are. It's going to take you 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And then it's going to take you 6 months.
Especially if you thought big, like if you're thinking bigger, like the junk removal guy did. He definitely wasn't just thinking like, I want to make 50K a year. Like, that definitely was not. That was a goal at some point, but that was like a stepping stone to when like shit hit the fan. He's already thinking to that like $100 million goal or whatever, right? Yeah. So like if you restart your business and you're already thinking huge, countrywide type things, worldwide type things, then like you're going down the good trail, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Like a lot of people think that it's like a fluke, that somebody blows up, and sometimes it happens quicker than other people. But there's something to be said about just being consistent with a big vision and doing it long enough that you just outwork and outlast everybody around you.
Yeah,
like till there's nobody left, and then you just emerge as like the authority.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But you need you need to play the long game, which requires a big astronomical vision. Like you want to go tour the world, like you want to get to that level where you're like filling stadiums all over the world, no matter where you go. You need a vision way bigger than this earth to get there. And then you need to be consistent at it for long enough that the world starts to go, yeah, that guy's like not going anywhere.
But then at the same time, if you get to like the stadiums, like you're not going to be doing stadiums forever either, right? Like you gotta find the balance of what's sustainable and realistic in terms of you, where there is great success, and coming from that success, you still have other successes in your life or in your career. It just may look a little bit different than playing at freaking Wembley Stadium or some crazy at the Scotiabank or like the MGM or something, where it's just like, you know, I'm fine playing at History or something. Like if we're talking about music, you know, like the successes can look different, even in your own path, regardless of what anyone else is doing.
Yeah, no, 100%. Success doesn't have to look any particular way, but it is, and it will be proportionate to your vision and how big the vision is. So like I always like Neil Young is a cool example.
Shout out Neil.
Yeah, love Neil. But
Neil.
He had this, he still to this day, he has this sort of brilliant way of like, he's like, yeah, I'm just a radio station broadcasting a signal from somewhere else. He goes, I was just given the gift of being the radio. I'm not the celebrity, but I'm just broadcasting this thing that's out of this earth, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of really successful artists have that same narrative. And I think it's really cool because his vision is greater than humanity. It's greater than like a concert with 20,000 people in a stadium. It's like, it's off this earth.
Yeah.
And that gave him, you know, that goal of gave him the result of a worldwide, you know, notoriety and stuff. So
to circle it back to self-doubt though, I think there's a couple other things that come in. And I think with our, like at least my generation and definitely your generation too, it kind of comes from that comparison of that like immediate feedback, immediate gratification. You compare yourself so much whenever you turn on your phone. And what's the same with comparison is the trump of all joy or something like that. Whenever you're comparing for the bad or good, it's not reflecting on yourself properly because it's through someone else's lens, and then you're applying it to yourself with different path, different shoes, different walks of life. It's just like it doesn't make any sense to compare. But like we're in such like a system now with social media and podcasting and whatever, where you're comparing yourself constantly. And I think that's where self-doubt comes on, because it's like, we're not where Joe Rogan is, obviously, you know what I mean? But like, that's not going to make us cry and go into a corner or not want to ever podcast ever again. Like, you know, you got to like take those L's on the chin and then see where it kind of rides out, where the wave's going. Because if you compare yourself to the greats of your industry, whether it's like the Tarantinos, the Joe Rogans, the Neil Youngs, like you're not going to get anywhere from just if that's like your reference point, you know?
Well, it can be if your space and time horizon's big enough. Like Joe Rogan didn't get to like he's Joe Rogan today because of, you know,
the 10 years of work, 15 years of work at podcasting.
Yeah, even arguably more than that.
With the comedy and Fear Factor. And,
you know, that's been a long haul, but he was able to get through that because his vision was big enough.
Yeah.
You know, and like Lewis Howe is a great example as well.
Okay.
You know, his podcast is awesome. But he's like, it took me 15 years. Like I've been talking for 15 years. You know, it's not like, but his like, you know, his mission was big enough. His vision was big enough, and he stuck to it, where most people don't have a big vision.
Yeah.
Their vision isn't big enough. So they hit the ceiling.
Yeah.
You know, and that's usually where self-doubt, all these things live, when you just can't see a big enough picture.
Yeah, and like all I'm trying to say is just like if you're comparing yourself to the greats right off the bat, it's a hard reference point to go off of. It's a good like guideline to where like a ceiling may be, but like if you're just starting in music and you're like, yo, I'm trying to do Billie Eilish numbers, it's like it's impossible. Like you're not going to do it. And then once you realize you can't do it, that's where the self-doubt comes in. When you just didn't put the time in. Like we said time and time again, people want money without the work. People want the results without the work and the whole nine, right?
Yeah, for sure. Comparing yourself to others is so futile. It's like it's the most unproductive thing in the world. It's like It's not productive at all. Don't do it.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's just so hard, right? Even for myself, like whether it's health, beauty, art, whatever, it's just so easy to compare when you're scrolling the endless scroll of that algorithm on any app, any like interface really, and you can just get so bogged down. So just be wary of what you're looking at, what you're consuming at the same time, and how that influences what your reference point of success is, you know? Because that's just gonna like have a plethora of self-doubt just wash itself over you.
Yeah, totally. And I think it was Tony Robbins or one of these guys.
Tony Robbins. He's crazy.
No, but he said something like a long time ago, and I just heard him in an interview or something like that. And he's like, your mind's like a cup of coffee, and it's just sitting there, right? And anyone can come along and just sprinkle a little bit of sugar in there, and it's nice, and that's great. But then at the same token, without you even knowing, somebody can walk by and put strychnine in it. You know, and we all have a responsibility, especially those prone to self-doubt and stuff. Maybe people that are working on building a big vision for themselves that don't quite have it. You have to protect your well-being at all costs. And like most successful people that I know they're not tuning into the news. They're not political people at all. They don't care. They don't get involved because all that shit takes up space and time in your brain. And then, like, if you're giving away all this valuable real estate in your brain for just political garbage,
Negative thoughts,
or just like untrue emotional information that's just, you know, bogging you down.
Yeah, what's going on with the Kardashians on Wednesday? Like, who cares?
Totally, right? But you got to protect all that.
Yeah,
and you know, if you don't, you're gonna be governed by events in the world, not. You know, you're going to be governed from without, not from within.
Yeah. I think that's a beautiful line to end on, unless you got any more stuff, dude. I think, just to summarize, just if you're self-doubting yourself, recognize where it's coming from, and then attack the challenge head on. We don't like to call them problems. We like to call them challenges. And then see where it goes, see where it's coming from and why you're feeling this way, and see how you can overcome it.
Yeah. If you have self-doubt, sit down and refocus on your mission. Grow your vision big enough, and the doubt will dissolve.
Let's be astronauts and not scuba divers, brother.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know. Thanks for listening, guys. Have a good one. We'll be back next week. Cheers.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review. And if you'd like to be notified of more episodes, please be sure to follow the Creative Island podcast now.
Want access to exclusive content, our community newsletter, live events, and so much more? Visit creativeisland.online today to join the Creative Island community.
See you at the top.